The ocean at night is a place of profound stillness, where the energy of the day slowly settles into something softer and more subdued. As the sun dips below the horizon, the water begins to change, not in any dramatic way, but in subtle shifts that happen gradually and gently. The colors fade from bright blues and greens into deeper shades of indigo and violet, and then, as darkness arrives fully, the ocean becomes a vast expanse of dark water that blends almost seamlessly with the night sky above it. When the moon rises, it casts its light across the water in a way that is entirely different from sunlight. Moonlight is cooler, softer, and it doesn't penetrate deeply into the ocean. Instead, it rests on the surface, creating a silvery path that stretches from the horizon toward wherever you might be standing or floating. This path of light moves and shifts with the gentle motion of the waves, never quite still, always adjusting itself as the water rises and falls in its slow rhythm. The reflection is not perfect or mirror-like, but rather broken into countless small fragments of light that dance and shimmer with each ripple. The waves themselves continue through the night, just as they do during the day, but they often feel gentler in the darkness. Without the wind that frequently picks up during daylight hours, the nighttime ocean can become remarkably smooth, with only small swells passing beneath the surface. These swells are the memory of winds that blew somewhere far away, perhaps hundreds of miles distant, and they travel across the ocean slowly and steadily, arriving at distant shores long after the wind that created them has ceased. At night, you might notice these swells more easily because there are fewer distractions, fewer visual elements competing for your attention. The water simply rises and falls, in a rhythm that has no beginning and no end. The temperature of the ocean surface changes very little between day and night. Water holds heat much more effectively than air does, so while the air above the ocean might cool considerably once the sun has set, the water itself remains relatively warm. This creates a gentle contrast, where the air feels cooler against your skin, but if you were to touch the water, you would find it still retains much of the warmth it absorbed during daylight. This difference in temperature between water and air can create a very light mist in some places, a barely visible layer of moisture that hovers just above the surface, softening the boundary between ocean and sky. In the darkness, the sounds of the ocean become more noticeable. During the day, there are many things to look at, many visual distractions, but at night, your attention naturally shifts to what you can hear. The sound of waves reaching the shore is constant and steady, a soft rushing noise that repeats over and over without ever being exactly the same twice. Each wave has its own character, its own particular sound as it breaks and spreads across the sand or rocks. Some waves are quiet, barely audible, while others are slightly louder, but even the louder ones are gentle, lacking any harsh or jarring quality. This sound has a natural rhythm to it, and it's a rhythm that many people find deeply calming, perhaps because it's so regular and predictable, yet also organic and alive. Beneath the surface, the ocean at night is home to many creatures that become more active once darkness falls. These animals have adapted their lives to the nighttime hours, moving through the water in search of food or simply drifting with the currents. Many small fish that spend the day hiding among rocks or coral come out at night, swimming slowly through the dark water. They navigate using senses other than sight, relying on the lateral line along their bodies that detects vibrations and movements in the water around them. This allows them to swim confidently even when they cannot see, following the subtle cues that the water provides. Some creatures in the nighttime ocean produce their own soft light, creating small points of illumination in the darkness. When certain types of plankton are disturbed by movement, they emit a faint blue-green glow that lasts for just a moment before fading away. This creates an effect where, if you were to swim at night or if a wave were to break, you might see small sparks of light appearing briefly in the water. It's a very gentle phenomenon, not bright or startling, just a soft glow that appears and disappears almost immediately. These tiny organisms create their light through chemical reactions within their bodies, a process that requires very little energy and produces no heat, just a cool, soft luminescence that briefly marks their presence before they return to darkness. The moon moves across the sky throughout the night, and as it does, the angle of its light on the water changes. When the moon is low on the horizon, its light comes in at a shallow angle, creating that long path of illumination across the water's surface. As the moon rises higher, the light becomes more diffused, spreading more evenly across the ocean rather than concentrating in a single bright path. The overall effect is that the water becomes slightly more visible, though still quite dark, with the tops of waves catching small amounts of moonlight and reflecting it back toward the sky. If the moon is full or nearly full, there is enough light to see the basic shapes of waves as they move across the water. You can perceive their movement, see the gentle rising and falling of the surface, watch as they travel toward the shore. If the moon is new or just a thin crescent, the ocean becomes much darker, and individual waves are harder to distinguish. Instead, you might only hear them, sensing their presence through sound rather than sight. On these darker nights, the ocean feels more mysterious, though not in a frightening way, more in the sense that it becomes a space of unknown depth and extent, a vast presence that surrounds you with its quiet energy. Stars are often more visible over the ocean at night than they are over land, especially if you are far from coastal cities and their lights. The absence of terrestrial light pollution means that the sky can become incredibly dark, and against that darkness, stars appear in great numbers. The ocean reflects these stars in a very subtle way, not clearly or distinctly, but as a general softening of the boundary between water and sky. Sometimes it can be difficult to tell exactly where the ocean ends and the sky begins, particularly on very dark nights when both are deep shades of black and indigo. This blending creates a feeling of space and openness, as if the world has expanded into something much larger than it is during the day. The air above the ocean at night often carries a particular quality, a freshness that comes from the constant movement of water and air together. There is moisture in the air, but it's not heavy or uncomfortable, just a gentle dampness that you might notice on your skin or in the way sounds travel. Sounds move differently through humid air, traveling farther and with a slightly softer quality than they do in dry air. The overall effect is that the nighttime ocean environment feels enclosed in a gentle cocoon of moisture and sound, a space that is separate from the inland world, following its own quiet rhythms. Small creatures move along the shoreline at night, taking advantage of the cooler temperatures and the relative safety that darkness provides. Crabs emerge from their hiding places and walk slowly across the wet sand, their movements creating tiny tracks that will be washed away by the next tide. These crabs are not hurried or frantic, they simply go about their business, searching for small bits of food that might have washed up with the waves. If you were to watch them with a light, you would see them pause frequently, remaining still for several seconds before continuing on. This is their natural behavior, a pattern of movement and stillness that conserves energy and keeps them alert to their surroundings. The rhythm of the tides continues through the night just as it does during the day, completely independent of whether the sun is shining or not. The gravitational pull of the moon is constant, and it acts on the ocean continuously, creating the slow rise and fall of water levels that we call tides. At night, you can sometimes notice the tide changing more easily than during the day, because the waterline on the beach is often marked by a line of foam or debris, and by moonlight or starlight, you can see this line slowly moving up the beach or gradually retreating back toward the water. The movement is very slow, almost imperceptible from moment to moment, but if you watch for half an hour or longer, the change becomes apparent. Where the ocean is deepest, far from any shore, the nighttime water is extraordinarily dark. The darkness extends downward for thousands of feet, a column of water that light cannot penetrate. In these deep places, many creatures live their entire lives in perpetual darkness, never experiencing anything resembling day or night as we understand it. For them, the distinction between daytime and nighttime is meaningless, since their world is always dark. However, even these deep waters are not completely devoid of light, because of the bioluminescent creatures that live there, creating their own small points of illumination in the vast darkness. The ocean at night can be very calm in some places, particularly in bays and sheltered coves where the water is protected from wind and strong currents. In these protected areas, the surface of the water can become almost perfectly smooth, disturbed only by the occasional ripple from a fish moving near the surface or the gentle push of the tide. When the water is this calm, it reflects the night sky more clearly, and looking at it can be like looking at a liquid mirror, though one that moves and shifts slowly, never quite still enough to provide a perfect reflection. In tropical regions, the water remains warm even at night, and this warmth encourages certain types of plankton to gather near the surface. These tiny organisms respond to temperature and light, and at night, when the water's surface is cooler than the deeper water below, they sometimes rise up in great numbers, though each individual organism is far too small to be seen with the naked eye. Their collective presence doesn't change the appearance of the water in any obvious way, but it does provide food for larger creatures that come to feed during the nighttime hours, creating an invisible web of activity beneath the dark surface. Seabirds that have spent the day flying over the ocean often return to land at night, or they settle on the water's surface to rest. Some species of seabirds are capable of sleeping while floating on the water, and they do this in groups, drifting together in loose formations. They tuck their heads under their wings and bob gently with the motion of the waves, completely at ease in an environment that might seem precarious to a land animal. The water supports them effortlessly, and they rise and fall with each swell, sleeping peacefully throughout the night. The edge of the ocean where waves meet the shore creates a zone of white foam that is often more visible at night than during the day. This foam is created when waves break and air becomes mixed with water, creating countless tiny bubbles. These bubbles reflect whatever light is available, whether moonlight or starlight, and they appear as a bright line along the shore. The foam doesn't last long, it dissipates within seconds or minutes, but it is constantly being renewed by each new wave that breaks, so the line of white along the shore persists throughout the night. In places where the ocean floor is visible through clear, shallow water, moonlight can sometimes penetrate deeply enough to illuminate the bottom, creating ghostly patterns of light and shadow on the sand below. These patterns shift and move with the waves passing overhead, creating a gentle play of light that is completely silent and slow. Fish that rest on the bottom at night are sometimes visible in this dim light, their shapes barely discernible, like shadows among shadows. They remain very still, conserving energy, waiting for morning to arrive before they resume active swimming. The ocean absorbs sounds in a way that land does not. If you were to speak near the ocean at night, your voice would seem to be absorbed by the water and air, not echoing back to you as it might in an enclosed space. This gives the nighttime ocean a quality of quietness that is not just the absence of sound, but an active absorption of it, as if the water itself is listening. The only sounds that persist are those created by the water itself, the waves, the gentle movement of currents, the occasional splash of a fish or bird. These sounds exist within the larger quietness without disturbing it. They are part of the calm rather than an interruption of it. As the night progresses, the ocean continues its ancient patterns, completely indifferent to whether anyone is watching or listening. The water moves according to the pull of the moon and the push of the wind, following physical laws that have governed its behavior for billions of years. There is something deeply reassuring about this continuity, the knowledge that the ocean will continue to move and breathe and exist regardless of what happens in the human world. It existed long before humans appeared, and it will continue long after we are gone, following its own slow rhythms, responding to the moon and sun and the spinning of the earth. In some coastal areas, rivers meet the ocean, and at night, the mingling of fresh and salt water creates subtle changes in the water's character. Fresh water is less dense than salt water, so it tends to float on top, creating a layer that is brackish, neither fully fresh nor fully salty. In the darkness, you cannot see this layering, but it affects the way the water moves and the types of creatures that can live in it. Some fish move between these different layers, adjusting to the changing salinity as they swim, their bodies capable of tolerating these gradual transitions. Waves that have traveled across the entire ocean during the day continue to arrive at night, their journey ending as they break on distant shores. Each wave represents energy that was imparted to the water somewhere far away, perhaps by a storm that occurred days or weeks earlier. That energy has traveled across thousands of miles of open water, gradually diminishing but never quite disappearing, until finally it is released in the breaking of the wave. At night, these waves continue to arrive in their slow, steady progression, one after another, each one the end of a journey that began far away. The ocean at night is cooler than during the day, but the change is not dramatic. The water's great mass means that it changes temperature very slowly, so the cooling that occurs at night is subtle, perhaps only a degree or two. This slight cooling is enough to affect the behavior of some marine animals, but for the most part, the ocean remains much the same temperature through the night as it was during the day. This stability is one of the ocean's defining characteristics, the way it resists rapid change, maintaining a steadiness that extends through day and night, through seasons, through years. In the intertidal zone, where the ocean meets the land, nighttime brings a shift in activity. Creatures that were hiding during the day emerge to feed, and creatures that were active during the day retreat into hiding. The rock pools that remain when the tide goes out contain their own small communities, and at night, these communities are active in ways that are different from the day. Small fish rest near the bottom of the pools, while tiny shrimp move along the rocks, searching for algae and other food. Everything happens slowly and quietly, without urgency, just the normal business of living carried out under the cover of darkness. The horizon where the ocean meets the sky is often difficult to see at night, especially when there is no moon or when clouds cover the sky. The distinction between water and air becomes blurred, and both merge into a general darkness that surrounds you in all directions. This can create a feeling of being suspended in space, with no clear sense of up or down, near or far. It's a disorienting sensation for some, but for others, it's deeply peaceful, as if all the usual boundaries and distinctions have dissolved, leaving only the essential fact of being present in this moment, in this place. Small islands in the ocean are surrounded by darkness at night, with only the sound of waves to indicate the presence of the water all around them. If you were standing on such an island at night, you would hear the ocean on all sides, a constant presence that defines the limits of the land. The waves would arrive from different directions, their sounds overlapping and blending together into a general wash of sound that never quite stops. This creates an envelope of sound around the island, a reminder that the island is just a small piece of land in a much larger body of water. The ocean surface at night is in constant motion, even when the air is perfectly still. The water is always adjusting, always seeking equilibrium, responding to the countless forces acting upon it. The pull of the moon creates a very gentle sloping of the water's surface, imperceptible to the eye but measurable over great distances. Differences in temperature create subtle currents as warmer water rises and cooler water sinks. The rotation of the earth deflects moving water, creating gentle spiraling patterns in the currents. All of these forces work together continuously, keeping the ocean in motion even on the calmest nights. Dolphins sometimes swim at night, and when they do, they often create trails of bioluminescence behind them. As their bodies move through the water, they disturb plankton, causing them to emit light, and this creates a glowing wake that follows the dolphins as they swim. From above, if you were in a boat or looking down from a high place, you would see these trails of light moving through the dark water, marking the dolphin's path. The light fades quickly, usually within a few seconds, but while it lasts, it creates a beautiful effect, as if the dolphins are swimming through liquid stars. The sand on a beach is cooler at night than during the day, having released the heat it absorbed from the sun. Walking on beach sand at night, you would find it pleasantly cool against your feet, no longer hot or uncomfortable as it might be during the middle of a summer day. The coolness of the sand extends down several inches below the surface, while deeper sand, which the sun never reaches, remains at a constant temperature regardless of the time of day. This layering of temperatures in the sand is subtle, something you might notice only if you were to dig down with your hands, feeling the change as you go deeper. Nighttime fishing is practiced in many parts of the world, taking advantage of the fact that certain fish are more active after dark. Fishermen go out in boats with lights, which they use to attract fish to the surface. The fish are drawn to the light, perhaps out of curiosity or because the light attracts smaller creatures that the fish feed on. The boats sit quietly on the dark water, their lights creating small islands of illumination in the vast darkness. The fishermen work patiently, waiting for the fish to gather, their movements slow and practiced, part of a routine that has been followed for generations. The water near the shore is sometimes warmer at night than the water farther out, because shallow water heats up more during the day and loses that heat more slowly at night. This creates a temperature gradient, a gradual change in water temperature as you move from shallow to deep water. Marine creatures respond to these temperature differences, sometimes moving into shallower water at night because it's more comfortable, or moving to deeper water to find cooler temperatures. These movements are gradual and not driven by any sense of urgency, just animals adjusting their position in response to their environment. Jellyfish that swim near the surface during the day sometimes descend to deeper water at night, following the plankton they feed on. This vertical migration is subtle and slow, and it happens in response to changing light levels rather than the time of day itself. As darkness falls and less light penetrates the water, the plankton begin to rise toward the surface, and the jellyfish follow them upward. This creates a gradual shift in where different creatures are located in the water column, a daily rhythm of rising and sinking that has occurred for millions of years. The ocean at night is not completely dark everywhere. In some places, particularly in urban coastal areas, light from cities reflects off the clouds and creates a general glow that illuminates the water to some degree. This artificial light changes the character of the nighttime ocean, making it easier to see the water's movement but also diminishing the natural darkness that would otherwise prevail. In these lit areas, the ocean still moves in its ancient patterns, but it does so in an environment that is neither fully dark nor fully light, a twilight zone created by human activity. Far from any artificial light, however, the ocean at night returns to its natural state, a place of profound darkness broken only by the moon and stars. In this natural darkness, your eyes gradually adjust, becoming more sensitive to the small amounts of light that are available. After spending time in complete darkness, you might be surprised at how much you can actually see, how the faint light from the stars is enough to perceive the general shape of waves, the line of the horizon, the movement of water. Human eyes are remarkably adaptable, capable of functioning in light levels that seem impossibly dim at first. Seals sometimes rest on rocks at night, hauling themselves out of the water to sleep in relative safety. They choose rocks that are difficult for predators to reach, and they arrange themselves in groups, drawing some sense of security from each other's presence. Their breathing is quiet and regular as they sleep, and they remain alert even while resting, capable of waking quickly if something disturbs them. The rocks beneath them are often wet from sea spray, but the seals don't mind. Their bodies are adapted to being wet, and they are equally comfortable in water or on land. The wind at night over the ocean is often lighter than during the day, because the sun's heat during the day creates atmospheric instability that generates wind. At night, without the sun's heating, the air becomes more stable, and winds tend to die down. This creates calmer conditions on the water, with smaller waves and less choppy movement. However, this is not a universal rule, and in some places and at some times, nighttime winds can be just as strong as daytime winds, depending on larger weather patterns that have nothing to do with the daily cycle of day and night. The ocean floor far below the surface is completely unaffected by whether it is day or night above. At depths of thousands of feet, no light penetrates, so the difference between night and day is meaningless. The creatures that live at these depths experience a world of perpetual darkness, where time is marked only by the arrival of food drifting down from above, or by the internal rhythms of their own bodies. The temperature at these depths is constant, always cold, always hovering just a few degrees above freezing. The pressure is immense, but the creatures there are adapted to it, their bodies structured in ways that allow them to survive and function under conditions that would be lethal to surface-dwelling animals. Some types of plankton rise to the surface at night and descend to deeper water during the day, a behavior that protects them from predators that hunt by sight. This daily vertical migration involves movements of hundreds of feet, and it happens in oceans all around the world, involving trillions of tiny organisms. The movement is gradual, taking place over the course of hours, but the overall effect is that the distribution of plankton in the water column changes dramatically between day and night. This, in turn, affects where larger animals can find food, creating cascading effects throughout the entire ecosystem. The texture of the ocean surface changes throughout the night as wind conditions change. When the wind is calm, the surface becomes smooth, with only gentle swells passing through. If the wind picks up, the surface becomes rougher, with small waves and ripples creating a more textured appearance. Even a light breeze can create visible patterns on the water, with wind streaks appearing as darker lines where the wind is pushing the water more forcefully. These patterns are constantly forming and dissolving, creating an ever-changing surface that never looks quite the same from moment to moment. In polar regions, the nighttime ocean can be extremely cold, with temperatures hovering near the freezing point of seawater. Ice forms on the surface in some areas, creating a thin crust that breaks and reforms with the movement of the water. The ice makes gentle scraping and tinkling sounds as the pieces move against each other, a quiet music of water and ice. In these cold waters, marine life is sparse but highly adapted, with creatures that have antifreeze compounds in their blood to prevent ice crystals from forming in their bodies. The moon's reflection on the water is often described as beautiful, but it is also simply a physical phenomenon, light from the sun bouncing off the moon's surface and then reflecting again off the ocean. The path of reflected moonlight appears to lead directly toward you wherever you are standing, because of the way angles of reflection work. If you walk along the shore, the moon path moves with you, always pointing in your direction. This creates a personal connection with the moon and the ocean, as if the light is meant specifically for you, though of course it's visible to anyone else who might be watching from a different location. Waves that break on the shore at night release the same energy they would release during the day, but the experience of watching or hearing them is different in darkness. Without visual distractions, you become more aware of the sound, the rhythm, the pattern of waves arriving one after another. You might notice variations that you would miss during the day, times when the waves come more frequently or less frequently, times when they are larger or smaller. The overall pattern is consistent, but within that pattern, there are countless small variations, and at night, these variations become more apparent. The ocean continues to breathe at night, a slow, enormous breathing that involves the entire body of water. As the surface rises and falls with the swells, as currents flow and shift, as tides rise and recede, the ocean is engaged in a constant exchange with the atmosphere above it. Water evaporates into the air, moisture condenses and falls back into the ocean, gases dissolve into the water and are released back into the air. This exchange never stops, day or night, a continuous conversation between ocean and atmosphere that has been ongoing for as long as both have existed. In the darkness, time seems to move differently. Without the sun to mark the passage of hours, the night can feel either very long or surprisingly short, depending on your state of mind. The ocean itself is indifferent to time. It continues its movements regardless of whether anyone is measuring or noticing. The waves that arrive at shore at midnight are no different from the waves that arrive at noon, except that they arrive in darkness rather than light. They carry the same water, moved by the same forces, ending their journey in the same way. The ocean at night is neither friendly nor unfriendly, it simply is. It exists as a vast body of water, governed by physical laws, responding to forces like gravity and wind and the rotation of the earth. It provides a home for countless creatures, it shapes the climate of the entire planet, it connects continents and separates them. All of this continues at night just as it does during the day, the same ocean, the same water, the same endless movement. The only difference is the absence of sunlight, and in that absence, a certain quality of peace settles over everything, a quietness that makes the ocean seem even more vast and more ancient than it does in daylight. Human beings have always been drawn to the ocean at night, finding something compelling in the combination of water and darkness. Perhaps it is the sense of mystery, or the calming rhythm of the waves, or the way the night sky seems to extend forever when viewed from the shore. Whatever the reason, people have sat by the ocean at night for thousands of years, watching and listening, finding something in that experience that speaks to a deep part of themselves. The ocean doesn't know or care that humans find it meaningful, it simply continues being itself, moving in its ancient patterns, indifferent and eternal. The coolness of the night air above the ocean can be refreshing after a hot day. The water releases the heat it stored during daylight hours, but it does so slowly, so the air above the ocean remains slightly warmer than the air over land. This creates gentle breezes as the warmer air over the water rises and cooler air from land flows out to take its place. These breezes are usually light and pleasant, carrying the scent of salt and seaweed, a smell that many people associate with the ocean and find comforting. Small waves make very different sounds depending on what they break against. Waves breaking on sand create a soft rushing sound, while waves breaking on rocks create sharper, more distinct sounds as water strikes the hard surface. Waves breaking on pebbles create a rattling, tumbling sound as the stones are moved by the water. At night, when you cannot see what the waves are breaking on, you can still tell by listening, identifying the character of the shore by the sounds the waves make. This is another way that the ocean communicates, through the language of sound rather than sight. The darkness of the ocean at night can be complete in some places, a darkness so profound that you cannot see your hand in front of your face. In this complete darkness, other senses become more important. You become more aware of sounds, of the feeling of air moving against your skin, of the sense of space around you. The ocean in complete darkness becomes an experience of pure presence, a place where you exist moment by moment, with no past or future, only the immediate reality of water and air and the gentle sound of waves. As the night progresses toward morning, the sky gradually begins to lighten, though this change is imperceptible at first. The darkness remains complete for hours, and then, slowly, almost reluctantly, it begins to thin. The stars become slightly less bright, not because they have changed, but because the sky itself is beginning to show the first hints of the coming dawn. The ocean remains dark even as the sky begins to lighten, and there is a period, just before sunrise, when the water is still black but the sky above is turning deep blue. This transition is gradual and gentle, a slow shift from night to day that happens without drama or fanfare. The ocean at night is a place of rest for many creatures, but for others, it is a time of activity. There is no single experience of the nighttime ocean, but rather countless different experiences, depending on what creature you are and where you are located. For a fish resting on the bottom, the night is a time of stillness. For a predator hunting in the darkness, the night is a time of movement and searching. For plankton rising toward the surface, the night is a time of migration. For the water itself, the night is neither one thing nor another. It is simply a continuation of the endless movement that has characterized the ocean since it first formed billions of years ago. The ocean's vastness is perhaps most apparent at night, when the limited visibility makes it impossible to see the full extent of the water. You know the ocean is there, stretching away in all directions, but you cannot see where it ends. This creates a sense of the ocean as something infinite, boundless, extending forever into the darkness. Of course, the ocean does have limits. It is a finite body of water covering a finite planet, but at night, standing at its edge, it feels infinite, and perhaps that feeling is more true than the facts, more important than the measurements and maps. The rhythm of the ocean at night is the same rhythm it follows during the day, but the experience of that rhythm is different. Without visual stimulation, without the bright colors and visible activity of the daytime ocean, you become more attuned to the fundamental patterns, the rise and fall of tides, the regular arrival of waves, the slow movement of currents beneath the surface. These patterns continue regardless of whether anyone is paying attention, regardless of whether it is day or night. They are the heartbeat of the ocean, the evidence of its life, and at night, that heartbeat becomes more apparent, more something you can feel rather than see. The ocean holds memory in its water, though not memory in the way we usually think of it. The water in the ocean has been there for billions of years, cycling through the Earth systems but never leaving the planet. Some of the water molecules in the ocean have been part of ancient seas, part of rain that fell on dinosaurs, part of ice that covered continents during ice ages. These molecules have no awareness of their history, they are just water, but they carry within them a kind of physical memory, a record of everywhere they have been and everything they have touched. At night, when the ocean is dark and quiet, it is easier to imagine this deep history, to sense the vast stretches of time that the ocean represents. As you listen to the waves at night, each one arriving and departing in its slow rhythm, you are hearing a sound that has been heard by every human being who has ever stood near the ocean at night. The sound is essentially the same now as it was thousands of years ago, as it will be thousands of years in the future. The ocean connects past and future through this simple, repetitive sound, creating a continuity that spans generations, centuries, millennia. In this sense, the ocean at night is a place where time becomes less important, where the present moment connects directly with all other moments, past and future, through the unchanging pattern of waves meeting shore. The water itself is neither warm nor cold, friendly nor hostile. beautiful nor ugly. These are human judgments, ways we interpret and make sense of the natural world. The ocean simply exists, moving according to the forces that act upon it, providing a home for the creatures that live within it, participating in the larger systems that regulate the planet's climate and chemistry. At night, when human activity is reduced and the ocean is less disturbed by our presence, it is easier to perceive the ocean as it actually is, rather than as we imagine it to be or want it to be. It is just water, just molecules of hydrogen and oxygen with various substances dissolved in them, following physical laws, indifferent to our thoughts and feelings about it. And yet, despite this indifference, despite the impersonal nature of physical processes, there is something in the nighttime ocean that touches something human, something that makes us want to sit and watch and listen, that makes us feel a sense of peace or wonder or connection. Perhaps it is simply that the ocean at night provides a space where our busy thoughts can slow down, where the constant chatter of daily life can fade into the background, replaced by the simple, repetitive sound of waves. Perhaps it is that the darkness and the vastness make us feel small in a way that is comforting rather than frightening, reminding us that we are part of something much larger than ourselves, something ancient and enduring. The ocean at night continues, indifferent to these thoughts, indifferent to being observed or interpreted. The waves keep coming, the tides keep shifting, the currents keep flowing. Creatures swim through the dark water, following their instincts, seeking food, avoiding danger, living their lives in ways that have been established over millions of years of evolution. The water holds them all, supports them all, provides the medium in which their lives unfold. And above it all, the night sky stretches out, dark and full of stars, silent and vast, while below, the ocean moves in its slow, eternal rhythm, breathing in and out, rising and falling, present and alive in the darkness.